within us and various other non-governmental organizations and institutions of higher learning, government officials, ambassadors who are also in our midst, and officials of a provincial government here in Gauteng, as well as our local government here in Ekurhuleni, distinguished guests, and ladies and gentlemen. It is indeed a great honor for me to have this opportunity to be present at this very important summit on economic empowerment for people with disabilities. This summit in many ways gives effect to a resolution of the meeting of the Presidential Working Group in 2020, where we felt that this summit should be held. I am a bit sorry that we have not managed to fulfill our commitment to convene the Presidential Working Group on disability at least once a year. We had hoped that we would be able to do so, and many other things intervened. We are, however, determined to correct this and to ensure that we intensify the work that must be done to advance the rights of people with disabilities, and particularly to improve their circumstances and to create an ecosystem, as Ms. Maharaj was saying here, that will enable people with disabilities to lead full and fulfilled lives. There are no better ways to celebrate International Persons with Disabilities Day this past Saturday than to hear about the recipients of the 2022 recipients of the Henry Vescardi Achievement Awards. This year, amongst the 6 recipients of this award was Nkosinathi Freddy Ndlovu, a member of our Presidential Working Group on Disability. Now, this award is given to distinguished visionaries, not just abantu nje, but distinguished visionaries, people who are role models, and people who are advocates making a profound impact within the disability community and beyond. We extend our congratulations to Nkosinathi on a great achievement that recognizes an exemplary contribution to our society. Thank you very much, and we congratulate you. We have just concluded Disability Rights Awareness Month. Our national theme was empowering persons with disabilities through resourceful, sustainable, and safe environments. This theme reflects the need to take an active approach to development that mainstreams disability. I'm rather pleased that a number of those who were reporting here were able to make reference to this concept. It calls for the effective implementation of policy frameworks to promote the unique needs, the unique experiences, and the expertise of persons with disabilities. Despite these progressive frameworks, persons with disabilities remain largely marginalized and excluded from meaningful participation in the social, political and economic spheres here in our own country. Since the location of responsibility for the rights of persons with disabilities was transferred from the Department of Social Development to the Presidency, there has been important progress to address these challenges and these deficiencies. Areas of focus include advancing communication methods and developing practical technological solutions for persons with disabilities. I say that there has been progress advisedly because when I arrived here, I thought that there would be a lot of anger, angst, and a lot of unhappiness. As I walked in, I found that people are busy with things that progress the plight and situation of persons with disabilities. I want to congratulate you for that, because that, for me, is important. And the reports that we have received from the various commissions, from Kodani Madula, from Nomvula Makato, from Samuel Shabalala and Shakila Maharaj, goes to a big extent to demonstrating that indeed there is progressive movement forward. I took time to look at some of the exhibitions. I did not go to all, but the many that I visited were being managed and manned and peopled by people who are positive, who are forward-looking, who are doing things. And yes, as someone else said here, I think it was Nomvula Makato said, these are people who are running businesses. They are involved in economic activity of one sort or another. I was even bowled over by a young girl, 16 years old, who says she wants to take over my job and become president. And she wants to utilize it through coffee making. I should have learned that. Maybe I should have started with coffee making. But I was really impressed that a number of people who I met here this morning are very positive, they are forward-looking, and they are looking forward to government in all its iterations, through various government departments, working together with them, achieving great things. But they were also expressing the need for the private sector to cooperate, to open doors of opportunities for people with disabilities. So coming here, much as the summit is delayed, I walk away from here filled with a great deal of hope, particularly because having moved the whole process of enhancing the many issues that affect people with disabilities into the presidency seems to be bearing great fruit. And I really am pleased to see that the fruit is being seen as it is germinating here. To improve self-representation in decision-making, government has created a consultative platform through the National Disability Rights Machinery, provincial disability forums, and representation in local government. In all the three spheres of our government, we are taking this whole challenge of the difficulties that people with disabilities are living with. The Presidential Working Group itself works directly with the Presidency on consultation and mandates on legislation as well as on policy, but also on implementation. As government, we have a responsibility to work with all social partners to empower people with disabilities and improve their quality of life. This, for us, is important for the advancement of a free and just society, to ensure, as Minister Nkwana Mashabane was saying, that no one is left behind. People with disabilities should not be left behind as we move forward with developing our country. Our Constitution emphasizes that everyone is equal before the law and has equal protection and benefit of the law. No person, including the state and private companies, may unfairly discriminate any person on grounds such as race, gender, belief, age, or disability. At a practical level, this means removing barriers. Yes, Minister Nkwana Mashabane, removing the strictures. Yes, strictures are barriers and barriers are strictures that impede the meaningful participation of persons with disabilities in all areas of public life. It means that we need to address all the areas in which persons with disabilities face discrimination through, for example, increasing job and training opportunities, promoting inclusive education and ensuring access to healthcare services. But as my sister Shakila Maharaj was saying, also to digital technologies. Critical to ensuring we empower and promote the rights of persons with disabilities is to prevent all forms of exploitation, violence, and abuse. This requires a concerted public awareness campaign to tackle prejudice and discrimination as well. That is key and that is important. It also means that our criminal justice system and public authorities and our Chapter 9 institutions need to play a more prominent role to ensure that persons with disabilities are safe, they are secure, and they are above all treated equally and treated with dignity. As we observe 16 days of activism of no violence against women and children, we are reminded that persons with disabilities are particularly vulnerable to gender-based violence. We are reminded that they often do not receive the necessary psychosocial support and access to justice. At the second Presidential Summit on Gender-Based Violence and Femicide, held just last month, there was great awareness of the specific vulnerabilities of persons with disability. It was resolved that priority needs to be given to disability mainstreaming and inclusion in the criminal justice system. It was also resolved that there should be research on how gender-based violence affects persons with disabilities and the socioeconomic factors that impact on them. A program on accessible courts and police stations is being implemented to improve access of persons with disabilities to justice. As a society, our responsibility is not only to protect people or persons with disabilities from harm, but to ensure that they are able to realize their full potential and live lives of comfort, of security, and material well-being. In other words, they must live full lives and lives of meaning. That is why we are holding this summit, and that is why we are going to follow up with, we're holding this economic summit, empowerment summit, and that is why we are going to follow up also with the one on transportation. I did get onto a bus in a wheelchair just to see the manner in which our transport system is able to be user-friendly to persons with disabilities on our transport system, on our roads and so forth. It does appear like we've taken great steps to enhance this, but we still need to spread the information so that persons with disabilities must not feel hamstrung and stay at home and fear that their mobility is going to be a great problem and a challenge. I must say that our BRT system has created or crafted buses that enable people on wheelchairs to be able to get onto wheelchairs. That I give them a big vote of confidence on. Now, so that will be further discussed at the next summit on transportation for people with disabilities. That must happen so that we are able to remove all these strictures and barriers, as I was saying. Now, this summit seeks to advance economic justice and to create opportunities for all people to achieve financial independence and reduce income inequality that still persists. To exercise one's economic rights, one must be able to actively and equally participate in economic activities. One must have access to land, to capital, to infrastructure, and to decent work. This cannot take place in isolation, but must be part of a structural change in the economy that will unlock growth and allow for development. Persons with disabilities must be involved in themselves, participating in conceptualizing, developing, implementing, monitoring economic development policies and programs, which subscribes to nothing about us without us. That is very key and important. Now, all social partners and participants in this summit need to work together to achieve certain outcomes. Now, I've been particularly pleased to see that there are quite a number of government departments that are here, that are collaborating, working together to achieve this very noble objective of ensuring that we do indeed finally get to a point where people with disabilities do have a decent life. Now, these outcomes include the prohibition of discrimination on the basis of disability across the employment value chain, and that persons with disabilities have equal access to just and favorable conditions of work. We need to work together to enable persons with disabilities to access technical and vocational guidance programs, the placement services, and continuing training. The reports that we received here do give great indicators of how we should go about achieving this great purpose. We must promote in an active and deliberate manner employment opportunities and career advancement for persons with disabilities. This requires appropriate policies, which may include, and in my book, must include, affirmative action programs, where there are clear set asides. they must also include incentives as well as other measures. We also need to mobilize our collective resources, both public and private, to promote opportunities for self-employment, for entrepreneurship and the development of cooperatives. What I saw on display this morning here tells me that there is great entrepreneurship amongst people with disabilities. I saw on display amazing products that are being made by a variety of people. Some of the products are way even beyond the imagination of people who are able-bodied. For its part, government has introduced targeted programs on economic empowerment that include a procurement target, yes, of 7% for companies owned and run by persons with disabilities. The conditions for economic empowerment must be created before individuals enter the labor market or look to start their own businesses. And this was articulated to me as I was walking around, that we need to create that environment so that even the companies that many people with disabilities are forming can be properly formalized, properly positioned, but beyond getting into operations, they must also know that they can be assisted to have markets. Because it's no use making a product, and it's no use making it as creatively as you may want to. But if you do not have a market, and if we do not create and open channels for people to market their products, the whole effort will fall apart. We need to provide quality, inclusive education, as well as information sharing for people with disabilities and also for children with disabilities. I think it was Ms. Shakila Maharaj who articulated it well and said, what did she say? She said, on information, she said, information is life. And I subscribed to that. This entails improving, strengthening also, ensuring that there is information that is shared so that people become more and more aware of the opportunities. And they also become aware of the risks, because there are a number of risks as well. But people need to be made aware of what the opportunities and the risks are. We should also strengthen issues such as reasonable accommodation support measures for learners in both special and ordinary schools. We must ensure that children with disabilities in ordinary schools have accessible learning materials no matter where the school is located. Walking around here, I also saw those companies that are owned by people with disabilities that make learning materials and equipment and digitally created materials. The government has developed a process to review the Education White Paper number 6 on inclusive education towards developing full service schools and inclusive methods in mainstream schools. All children, including children with disabilities, need and must receive quality education wherever they are and whatever their circumstances. So there is no way and no chance that children in our country other children should receive less quality education, like it used to happen under apartheid. So there should be no second-class education. All our children must receive top quality education. So I'd like to say, let us work together to build an inclusive and transformative society where the needs of all are advanced and equal priority and equality becomes the mainstream objective. We should work together to give practical meaning to the principle of nothing about us without us, and we should also say we should leave no one behind. Let us emerge from this summit not only with a clear sense of what needs to be done to empower persons with disabilities for economic and financial inclusion, but also with a renewed determination to make it happen. Implementation must be the order of the day. So the success of this summit will be measured by what we have achieved by the time we all finalize either the full outcomes, the declaration, and we should also look at what we do beyond this summit in the next weeks, in the next months to come, because this for me has been a very important milestone. This summit ought to have taken some time ago, but I'm glad that I've had this opportunity to be present as you hold this very important summit. And I think we are now on a roll. We're now going to have the next summit on transportation, and the discussions are going to go on, and I am going to set aside time to meet the Presidential Working Group. They have been saying they want to meet me, and I'm now going to set aside time so that we can sit down and have quality time to discuss, yes, about the implementation of the outcomes of this summit and the next one that you are going to hold, so that government can clearly demonstrate that indeed the rights and the interests of people with disabilities are prominent, and that we are going to treat them with a great deal of seriousness in all the ramifications of what we do. So I'd like to thank you, and for me it's been a real pleasure not only speaking here, but spending time with a number of the exhibitors as they were showing me amazing things that are being done by people with disabilities. Thank you very much for this opportunity.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would also like to thank the Chief of Staff, because I also intimidated her also. Always when we want the President, we have to talk to the Chief of Staff and we get the opportunity. She has already indicated that the meeting of the Presidential Working Group with the President will be before SONA, so that you can be able to make inputs that can go into SONA. So thank you. Mr. President, the Presidential Working Group says they do not have a picture with the President. So they requested to join you here so that they can have the picture with the President. The Secretariat and the Presidential Working Group, can you please? Yeah. Meanwhile, we are coming here. We will request, what's his name? Sifiso Mkasize to come up front so that he can make the vote of thanks.